You want to visit Morocco? In this video, we're going to share the top highlights of Morocco that you absolutely cannot miss, including what we wish we knew earlier before going on that trip. Watch till the end if you don't want to get fined by the traffic police for no reason. Hi everyone, I'm Isabel from Belle Around the World, and I recently went on a Morocco trip in April for 11 days on a private tour, and oh my god, this was nothing like I've ever expected at all. I honestly went there with no expectations except that, thinking that it's just going to be a really colorful city, but wow, everything just blew my mind. And this got me thinking of organizing group trips now because I want to show you the beauty of Morocco as well as like the different types of environments that you can see, whether it's rock climbing in the gorges or camping in the Sahara Desert. There's just so much to see besides the markets. So let me take you on this journey. One thing I was really surprised about was just how green Morocco was. The moment we stepped down from the airport, we started seeing greens all around, and this was such a stark contrast coming from Egypt where everything was brown. So what I really liked about Morocco is that throughout our 11-day journey from Casablanca all the way to Marrakesh, there was just so much to see and so many different environments, whether it's the temperate mountains of Chefchaouen, which is blue and cold, to the dry Sahara brown desert and the Todra gorges. You just meet all kinds of different climates and environments, so this trip would never bore you. The other thing that I liked that also caught me off guard was just how much more developed the country is compared to most other African countries that I've been, and especially to Egypt where we first came from. So like for instance, in major restaurants, you're able to pay with your card contactless. The roads are also really well paved and they're all tarmac, so there are street signs and all of that. So it's actually pretty organized and pretty structured country, as opposed to Egypt where there are no street signs, cars are crossing all the time, there aren't really speed limits. So going from that disorganized chaos to somewhere where it's more organized made the whole traveling a little less stressful. In terms of the Moroccan people, I really enjoyed their hospitality. It felt like they were really authentic and friendly, and they really wanted to welcome us in true Moroccan hospitality, beginning with mint tea and some dates or some pastries. No matter where you go, whether it's checking into a Riad or checking into a hotel, they always welcome you first with mint tea and then some dates or nuts. So that was really nice. I also enjoyed the fact that everyone is English speaking, from the hotel hosts to the local restaurant owners. They all spoke English, which made communication so much easier. Also, of course, we had a private guide which also spoke fluent English, so language barrier was not a concern. The other thing I learned was French and Spanish is also pretty commonly spoken in Morocco, so that was fun because I got to flex my Spanish a little bit. While tipping is a common thing in Morocco, there is like this subtle difference between, I guess, my experience in Egypt as compared to Morocco after I came from Egypt. One thing is that, like a lot of Egypt service people who work in the service industry, they really expect a tip. And so if you don't give a tip or the tip is insufficient in their minds, they would kind of give you a face. But I felt like with the Moroccan hospitality and the Moroccan service industry, like no matter how much you tip them, the waiters, the waitresses are always really friendly and hospitable with you. So that was like pretty pleasant to experience. The other little observation that I had was like when we're going to eat at restaurants, they usually have designated smoking areas and non-smoking areas, which is pleasant, especially for someone that doesn't smoke and wouldn't want to inhale secondhand smoke. They have this segregation, which is nice. Also, Morocco, I didn't expect this, but you can find stray cats everywhere, so it was fun to be entertained by these stray cats and kittens. I think we're not foreign to how colorful Morocco is, whether it's their architecture or their food or their spices. There's just a smorgasbord of colors, explosion, senses, and that was what really, really excited me. I love visiting local markets, so getting to see all these, whether it's the souvenirs or how they make and carve their tiles, it was really impressive. So my favorite cities, no doubt, is Marrakesh and Fes, because I really got to see how the local people interacted at the markets and Also, like, there are all these narrow alleys that you can get lost in, so it was really fun to explore. So let's talk a little bit about how to prepare for your Morocco trip so you don't get scammed, you get a pleasant experience, you don't get fined whatsoever. So even though I went with a private tour guide for 11 days where they settled all of our accommodation and transport and just the whole itinerary, and they were clearly experienced, like my driver was experienced, right? Yet this was not something I expected, but they actually take speeding pretty seriously. Whether you're putting on seatbelts, whether you have your headlights on in your car, whether you're speeding or not, they have all these little things that they look out for, and there are always like secret traffic police along the way that even the local drivers, they get caught off guard. So as safe as our driver was, we still got pulled over a couple of times because we maybe went over the speed limit by, a couple kilometers per hour. So that is one thing to really look out for, especially if you're driving alone. It is a really drivable country. A lot of people just rent their own cars and then head around the country on their own. It is really encouraged to do that, but because it was our first taste of the country, we opted for a guided tour. And this was things that we realized that if we were traveling on our own, I probably would have, broken the rules. So it was interesting to learn that. So that's an important point to know. And since there are traffic police at different checkpoints along the way, it's also handy to have your documents, your passports with you, just in case they need to have like spot checks here and there. As with most touristy places, there are always people who would be offering to take pictures for you, take pictures with you, show you things so you can take pictures of. There are all these snake charmers along the markets of Marrakesh, and they're always trying to get you to take pictures and watch them. So if you don't want to be scammed, if you don't want to pay extraordinary amounts of tips just to take pictures of them, try and stay away from them, or just make it clear that you're just there to watch, which is perfectly fine. But if you start taking pictures of the monkeys, which I wouldn't recommend because I thought it felt a bit like cruelty. But yeah, if you're just watching, it's fine. But if you really blatantly want to take pictures with them or of them, then be prepared to pay a tip, an agreed sum of money. Morocco in general is also not a very card-friendly place, with the exception of course, Marrakesh, and if you go to restaurants in Marrakesh. But outside of the big cities, pretty cash-heavy. So I would recommend that you go to money exchange places in big cities like Marrakesh or Fes to exchange enough local Moroccan dirham. It can tide you over when you are doing the smaller trips between those big cities. In terms of weather, it is pretty varied and changing all the time. So when we first arrived in Casablanca, it was rainy and it was windy, something that we didn't expect. But then when we were in the Sahara Desert, obviously it was really sunny and hot. But in the evenings, it gets pretty cool. So it's important to dress for all kinds of weather, whether it's rain or shine or wind or cold. And if you're visiting the Blue City, Chefchaouen, which I am sure you absolutely will, it's in a temperate mountainous area. So when we went in April, the temperatures were as low as around 8 degrees in the evenings, and if it rains, it would probably get even colder. So make sure to layer up, layer down, have an extra rain jacket just in case there's rain. So in super popular cities like Marrakesh, for example, something we learned as a first-hand experience is to always book dinner reservations or hammams way in advance, at least a day in advance, because especially with hammams, there are only a select few hammams that are really quality and that provides a really good experience. And a lot of them, they only accept reservations a day in advance. So what we did was we booked a day in advance, and even then there were already very limited time slots. So it's important to book all of these things a day in advance. And with like rooftop bars, rooftop restaurants, especially if they're highly rated, we got turned away a couple of times because we just wanted to walk in. So if you want to have a good dining experience, make sure to book them in advance. I'm sure at some point during your Moroccan trip, you'll be staying in Riads. And I also highly recommend staying in Riads because you get a taste of the true Moroccan hospitality. You get to see the architecture, you get to see the high ceilings. You really appreciate the colors of just how all these Morocco architecture is like. The one thing that I noticed from staying in all these Riads in different places is that like there are a lot of colors, there's a lot going on. So if you are a disorganized person, sometimes you'll find a missing sock somewhere or you lost your toothbrush. It's important to try and pack as organized as possible so you don't lose things, because the colors can really get you off sometimes and your items get camouflaged in between the sheets or the carpets, things like that. So if you need tips on packing, I have a video, I'll link it up there. on how to organize your packing, on like packing cubes and how to use them, to make sure you don't miss out a sock or forget your travel pillow when you leave Morocco. And one last tip, especially if you're visiting the busy markets, is to always keep right, because if you notice, the alleys and the walkways can be really narrow at some times, and you get shops left and right, and people are transporting goods left and right. So sometimes they use motorbikes to transport goods, sometimes they use minivans, you'll be surprised, sometimes they use mules. So it's important to always just keep to the right. And there you have it. I hope you've got some solid tips on visiting Morocco and you've got everything you need to prepare for your trip to Morocco. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. And if you found this video useful, I would really appreciate a thumbs up and a subscribe button down below. In any case, I'll see you in the next travel video. Cheers!